A few years ago, I was volunteering at a homeless shelter in Cardiff that provided a hot meal and a bed for the night in the churches around Cardiff through the winter. And I was talking to a young man there who was 18, 19 years old. He was a young Italian guy. And he was saying, my ambition is I want to start my own business. Fair enough. That was his ambition. But then he said, but I wouldn't want to do it here. I wouldn't want to do it in Europe. I want to go to the US because in the US, you can start a business and get rich and they don't tax you too much. Because in this country, the rich get taxed too much. I was so interested and so shocked in a way that this was someone who was young, poor, homeless, immigrant, the bottom of the economic ladder, struggling to get by. He was homeless. And yet his criticism of the system he was in wasn't that people like him weren't looked after well enough. It was that we tax the rich too much. And it just goes to show that it is our minds that can get captured by the system, not just our bodies. The freedom of the mind is the beginning of all other freedoms, said the great universalist Clinton Lee Scott, because it is the capturing of our minds that leads to the capturing of our bodies, the capturing of our whole selves and the system that we're in. It starts in our heads. This is a mental thing that in our heads creates the world that we live in. The same is true in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, where Moses is saying, so Pharaoh, let my people go. Let's get these people out of slavery. And Pharaoh responds by actually making the working conditions worse. He says, no, I'm going to make your working conditions worse. And the slaves say, complain to Moses, you shouldn't have asked for our freedom because now our life has got worse. Things got worse before they got better. And they were complaining not to the person who was responsible for that, Pharaoh, for making their working conditions worse. They were complaining to Moses, the liberator, saying, well, we don't want to be liberated. This liberation stuff is too hard because our minds are captured, not just our bodies captured as slaves, but our minds captured that this is what we deserve and we shouldn't ask for anything more. It had to take their souls, their minds being freed to think that they deserved freedom for them to take that walk into freedom and away from slavery. And the same is true today, that our minds are captured. Our minds are captured in all kinds of ways by all kinds of chains that say that we're not worthy, chains that say we're unlovable, the chains of our anxieties, the chains that say we're not very good at people, we're not very good parents, we're not good at our jobs, the chains of saying we don't deserve things, that we have anxiety, the chains that say we don't deserve any better, that there is no hope, there is no alternative. These are the mental chains that hold us in place. And freedom begins by realizing these chains, seeing these chains and being freed of them mentally and spiritually. Because the way to be free is to do prayer, spiritual practice, meditation. That is the practice of freedom, the practice that enables our minds to get free. Because when we do a spiritual practice, what we notice are the chains around our minds. When you sit and you try to pray or meditate, or you sit in quietness, what you often notice is that, I'm really worried, I'm really anxious, or I'm really distracted. And then that becomes a chain in itself, the chain of saying, I'm bad at meditation, because all these things, all these distractions and thoughts and anxieties are knocking around in our minds. And we think that makes us bad at meditation. We think we're doing it wrong because we think meditation or spiritual practice is just closing our eyes and somehow automatically being full of kind of a spiritual enlightenment and joy and peace. And then that's it. And we're good. And we're enlightened or spiritual or whatever, just by sitting there and doing the practice. And we think that's what it is. And then we do it and we think, I'm just having stupid thoughts about all kinds of distracting things that I'm worried about. But that is how it should go. You are doing it right when that happens, because what is happening is you are getting greater awareness of those chains that surround you, the chains of anxiety, the chains of unworthiness. the chains of ego, the chains of all kinds of things surround us. And prayer is the practice of actually just noticing that they exist, as seeing them and going, oh, yeah, these chains are there. But the way these chains work is that their heaviness is through us ignoring them. And as soon as we become aware of them, our awareness actually in itself dissolves the chains, little by little, gradually, not all at once, but by sharpening our awareness and going, oh, yeah, I am anxious. Oh, yes, this exists, that exists in my mind. Just the fire of attention on these things begins to dissolve them away. And we begin to be aware of the reality that is deeper than these chains, the God that is deeper than these chains, who invites us into freedom, who is the freedom that is beyond these chains that hold us down. The freedom of awareness, the freedom of awakeness, the freedom of aliveness that is the meeting of God. There was once a woman who went to the circus in the days when circuses still had animals, and she saw an elephant, big elephant, who was tied to the ground with the tiniest piece of string. And the woman thought that elephant could easily break free of that string. It could just pull on it and it would be away. And she said this to the elephant man who was looking after the elephant. And he said, well, yeah, that's true. But the thing is, when they're babies, we attach a strong chain, a strong rope to those elephants. And they learn that they pull and they pull, and as hard as they pull, they will never be free. And once they've learned that lesson in their minds, we can attach a smaller and smaller rope, a thinner and thinner rope, because they've already learned that they can't be free of it. And in the end, you can attach the smallest string to that elephant's leg, and it will never be free because in its mind, it has decided that freedom is impossible. And that is us. We are that elephant who in our minds have decided that freedom isn't possible, that freedom for a better world isn't impossible, that freedom from our anxieties aren't impossible, that freedom for our sense of unworthiness isn't possible. We've decided these things aren't possible, when in reality, it is a thin string that holds us. And if we just pulled on that string, we would be free.